Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live episode of To the Moon, Allison, where we talk about the top and trending works in science fiction, fantasy, speculative fiction, and romance. I'm your host, Allison Martine Hubbard, author of the award-winning contemporary romance series, The Bourbon Books, and works of speculative fiction. It is a huge treat for me today because I am talking to contemporary romance author Abigail Tyrrell, who is also one of my very best book besties and book sisters. And I'm so excited that I get to use this show as a chance to speak to her live and not just typing across the globe because Abigail is from the Suffolk, UK. Hello, Abigail.
Hello.
Hello. So, Abigail, we talk all the time about so many things, and it's going to be hard for me to focus on, okay, we're just talking about books and not our children, our lives, what we're wearing to weddings, what we're doing with our hair, or anything else. So if at any point anyone watching this is like, could you get back to the books, just guide us. We'll get there. I promise we'll get there. But honestly, we do talk a lot about books and what we're writing all the time, because for those who don't know and haven't heard me talk about this before, Abigail is one of my best beta/alpha readers. So we read each other's work before it even knows what it is. Like, we will send each other partial works going, here's something. I don't know what it is. You tell me. And then we'll send each other 10 pages, and then we'll get the same 10 pages slightly altered. And oh, by the way, now it's changed genre. Okay, she's done that to me a couple times. But and Elisa is saying hello. Hi, Elisa.
Hello.
Saying hi, Allison. Hi, Abigail. Elisa, you should be joining us here with the A's. The A writers here.
Team A.
The A's. But Abigail's first work was one that I actually got to beta before it came out, and it's called Roots Before Branches. And it broke my heart, 7 Ways to Sunday, the story of Charlie and Ezra. And I love those boys so much. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Roots Before Branches?
Do you know what's weird about Roots is people will talk to me about it and ask me, I'm like, did that happen?
You don't remember the book? I do.
Wrote it. Like, oh, I don't remember that happening.
Do you mean in the book? You don't remember something happening in the book?
Yeah, so something like, oh, I liked it when Charlie said this. I was like, yes, he definitely said that.
See, that makes me think you're remembering like a different version, because I've read more than one version of that. Like, you had some different things and you're like, I'm going to do this to him. Oh, just kidding. No, I'm not. And you've done that to me a couple times where I won't specify which books or which works, but you've killed off and then unkilled people. You're like, I decided he could live. Like, what are you doing to me? So it doesn't surprise me if you don't know what they said either.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? When you're writing it, it goes through so many different like edits and versions, and obviously there's things that I wrote and I'm like, oh, I didn't really, because it's been out for a couple of years now. Like, I actually haven't sit down and read it for such a long time. But I think that's kind of like what was nice about when you're writing, is there are things that you, when you're reading again, you're like, oh, I don't remember writing that. I quite like that. And I think with Roots as well, because it was my first one, kind of going back and looking at it and the story there, I mean, you know me and how I write, like the story came out of nowhere, and how it progressed, like with Charlie's life and how he gets older and how he deals with like violence in his life and romance in his life. That wasn't something I really planned. So when I then go back and like look at it, I'm like, oh, okay, that happened. But yeah.
Well, and one of the things I loved about Roots Before Branches, and for those who haven't read it, go read it, but it's the story of a man I believe he's English, but he goes to a French countryside and he's studying art, and there's all this beautiful imagery of the art and the French countryside, and he falls in love there where he's really not meaning to, and it's this kind of coming of age story, but it doesn't stay there either. It goes throughout his life, and it also deals with his mental health and with family relations and with homophobia and violence and all this stuff. And yet throughout, it's still this beautiful love story. And I can't think of any other book I've read that tackles so much, but in such an organic, and that is not like a joke about the garden, way, that it just feels like this is this natural progression of this person's life and their story. And I loved it. And I've never read an author other than you, because you do it to me all the time and you just like to break me, where you have these characters that are so real and so heartbreaking, but they're not just sad. Because I know some people are like, well, I don't want to read sad books, because I mean, I understand that nobody wants to just be depressed while they read the whole time, but it's this realism, this depth of emotion. And I just don't know how you go there, especially if you don't even remember that you went there. That's the amazing part. You're like, oh, I did? Oh, that's good of me then.
I think that for me, when writing, again, with like Roots and with You're My Summer, like I do like romance. I like reading romance. I like to write romance, but I don't like romance to be the defining feature of my characters, because that's not what it's like in real life. And
right,
you know, mental health and things is something that I've struggled with, and most people struggle
Same.
with. And there we go. So, you know, and I think having it in literature, to be able to see that your life isn't defined by romance, you can still have these like problems. Like with Charlie, it was more he had a certain condition, whereas with Elliot and You're My Summer, he's just a mess. But
Elliot's just a train wreck.
He is.
He's my favorite train wreck. Yes.
But you know, I personally don't like reading books where you have this main character who is completely perfect, and you can't see yourself in them at all, and you kind of read it and you're like, oh great, well, they had a wonderful life. Back to mine now, where I'm always wonderful, and you know.
I guess I'll just go back to the sadness of me. Well, and it's funny you bring that up about the ability to relate to a character, because they aren't perfect and their life isn't all just perfectly curated. And it's funny because somebody on Twitter recently was saying, oh, I love that Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez have gotten back together, and I want to read a rom-com inspired by that. And I'm just thinking, well, I don't really see what's all that inspiring about them, because aside from the fact that they're super duper famous, I've never seen J-Lo be anything other than like, look at me, I'm perfect. I can't empathize with that. I'm like, I'm sorry, you're gorgeous and super wealthy, and maybe your love life hasn't always worked out, but everything else seems to be pretty good for you, woman. Like, she's amazing and inspiring in that way, but not for me to be able to write someone like that, because, I mean, I joke, you know this, I like to say all my main characters are just me in different wigs, and some of them are more like me than others, but I'm a train wreck, and I don't think you could write a realistic character who wasn't in some way their own version of a train wreck. And is that a fault of me as a writer? Probably, but I think that I know that when I read characters, including your lovely main characters, I need to have something that I can latch onto and go, oh, I have those struggles too. I have those feelings too.
And then that's really evident in like your Bourbon books, because again, it's not the romance that defines that character. Of course, right. You know, that's the aim of the book is you know, that she's going to get with Adam, and you know that's kind of the aim. And but even with the newest one, I think you know, when I was reading it before it came out, and I said to you, I like that it was focusing on Jamie's. I won't do any spoilers for people. You won't spoil it.
I know. I trust you. You're good.
Focused was more on like Jamie and kind of her career and those aspects of her life. There was, of course, there's romance there because that's what the books are about. But there was another aspect to that, and I really like that. I think there needs to be more of that in romance novels, because as much as we like to read for escapism, and it is nice to read like fluffy romance sometimes, I love reading them too.
Me too.
But I don't think that it is, especially maybe for younger people, to see that life isn't a perfect rom-com. You're going to have issues. That person might not actually be the right one for you, and you might go down many routes to get to the right person. So I think it's good to explore those things.
I like that you use the word roots, like roots before branches. So I'm just dropping titles for you. But I do love that. It's because I feel like romance works best when it's a holistic picture and not this kind of absurd slice where it's like, yes, and the only thing that's ever occupying their mind is the man of their dreams or the woman of their dreams or the envy of their dreams, whatever, like that they have nothing else going on, because nobody's that simplistic. Nobody's that, I want to say, like shallow or single-minded. Everybody should have more to them, and how those interrelate with the romance is a big thing. And some of those are like, oh, I don't know, being a rock star and a disaster of a human being. So I have You Are My Summer, which is possibly, I think this is my favorite of yours that I've read so far, even though like I love all of them, but just, and it's not just because there's just random chickens in here, because if you haven't read any of Abigail's books, she is hilarious. So it's funny because you don't necessarily expect a story about a sometimes drug-addled rock star who just gets himself into all sorts of trouble and then manages to fall in love in ways he doesn't even expect, to also have a story about a mother who has a chicken who she thinks is like her mom reincarnated, which is ridiculous. But I love it. I mean, it's not like the main point of the story, but will I always be like, and then there's chickens? Yeah, I really will. I will. So do you want to tell us more about You Are My Summer? Because this is your newer of your two full-length novels. We'll get to you have a novella as well and some other works off to the side we will get to. But can you tell us a little bit more about You Are My Summer, which I always call Yams. We just, because, you know, You Are My Summer. We call it Yams.
We don't
Talk to us about the Yams.
About that title all the time. Okay, You Are My Summer was, I found really difficult to write because it was the one after Roots. And it was like, I needed to do something different. And I love music, as you know. I talk to you about it quite a lot.
Yes.
Like, listen to this. And I'm sure you're
sending me links. I don't know who these people are. I'm old and out of touch, Abigail. I'm older than you and out of touch. And I'm like, who are these people? And you're like, I love them. I'm like, okay, fine. Who is this band?
You need to love them too.
Yes.
But I wanted to explore kind of like that kind of route. Obviously, that's not something I've personally experienced. I'm not a famous rock star. So
you're not a famous rock star. Are you a groupie? You slept with a lot of band members back in the day? No. Yeah, me neither. I was in the band. That's really not same. Like marching band, not cool.
No, not quite the same thing.
No.
But I wasn't even in a marching band, Allison. I played the trumpet for about a week in primary school, so that's about as far
1 week of trumpet doesn't cut it.
No. So yeah, but I quite liked looking at a world that wasn't mine and getting to look at that and see, like, you know, someone who, as we've said, Elliot, who's the main character, is a complete mess. He doesn't know what he's doing half the time because his life is like thrown into a shambles with his relationship breakdown, and then the story is about how he then builds that back up, including, you know, his personal relationships, his personal struggles, and his career. So it does cover quite a lot, given that it's not a particularly long book, and it's got his mum in it, who I love. So
I love his mom. Like, you should write moments for a living. Oh, you do write moments for a living because they're perfect. But it's just this I don't know how you get into these people's heads who are just beyond disaster zone, and it's a good disaster. So people are like, oh, I don't want to. It's like, okay, think about it. If you are a young, very attractive, everybody wants to sleep with you, everybody thinks you're amazing rock star, and anything you want is at your fingertips, and you're not making the best decisions, yeah, things aren't always going to work out for you. And then to see who comes to your side and who doesn't, and who's been there for you and maybe who hasn't been. And then there's, I don't know any spoilers, but there's revelations of betrayals and all sorts of things that happen in here. And just to be like, it's hard enough in regular people life where we just have regular stuff, but then you throw on top of it fame and everybody's watching every move you make. And how do you get through that? And it's handled so beautifully, but definitely the rock star thing. If anybody is looking for, I want a rock star romance, but maybe not the same ones where it's the groupie who sleeps with the rock. I think maybe I just seen those in too many fan fictions. Oops. Yeah. I admit I read fan fiction. Yes.
Not us.
This would be a perfect one for you. And who designed this cover, Abigail?
I did.
That would be you. We talk a lot about Abigail is also, she's like this jack of all trades, because you are an author, but you're also this amazing artist and you've created all these beautiful works. And you're also the one who, for people who don't know, like, she has helped on my covers. Anything that looks weird on my cover is my fault. That's me. But she has done like the trifold design, because to create something like this, it's not just, well, there's a picture on the front, but there's the spine design and the back, and oh look, there's a quote here. The quote's from me because I got to read this early on, so I got to talk about how much I love this book and share it. So I go around posing with the book whenever I can. But But you do all this and you get the inspiration for these people, because sometimes you send me these pictures of like, oh, look at this guy, oh, he's who I kind of picture of this. We do this back and forth all the time. Anybody who's like, what, you base your characters on real people? Well, not necessarily, but sometimes their hair or the way they
fan cast them.
We totally fan cast them.
You know, when you're writing, you do have an idea, and 9 times out of 10 it's probably someone who exists. So yes. Why not share that?
Or you match them up. You go, okay, so he sings like this guy, but he looks kind of more like this guy. But when he's speaking, his cadence is more like that, which is kind of funny, because I've always noticed, I think I first learned it when I was really young and I was hearing different singers who have a really strong way of singing, and then you hear them and they sound totally different when they speak. And it's like, what happened to your R's? Like half the time, if it's like, if anybody who's British or from Boston or something like that, like they lose certain letters and then they're speaking going, how do you do that? Because it's just
like Adele, isn't it? She doesn't sound anything like how she sings. And like as soon as she opens your mouth, you're like, sorry?
Who is that? Well, I know one of the ones, and this isn't even singing versus speaking. This is the first time I heard Ewan McGregor speak like normally. I'm just going, I need a translator, because his brogue is so thick. And I think I'd seen him in maybe Train Spotting and possibly Moulin Rouge by that point. But it's just like, okay, you had to scale that back by a factor of 10 for anybody on this side of the Atlantic to have a clue what you're saying, because it was just like so thick. I was going, that's not English. What is that? Speak a new language and maybe I'll figure that one out. But the Scottish lost me completely. But yeah, you've got these beautiful boys, and you usually just draw these beautiful young soft boys that I'm just, they're all some version of Timothy Chalamet, honestly. There are a lot of them with the hair and everything like that.
It is, isn't it? It's the curly head, kind of skinny, like kind of boy. I'm
not saying we have a type, but we have a type.
I have a type. You have a type. If someone's got curly hair, they're in.
You're like,
you're good. I'm in love. A lot of people who read You and My Summer said, oh, did you base him on Harry Styles? I was like, weirdly, no. But you can look at Harry Styles. He's got curly hair. He works. It's fine.
You're like, acceptable. I'll take it.
So
and it's funny because you know who I've dream cast, and I was joking recently. I don't have the Photoshop skills to do this, but now that I've written 4 of the Bourbon books, and then there are a couple extra guys in there who aren't necessarily the main lead men, but they're like side men, and you know who I've dream cast half of them is. I'm like, oh, that one's Tom Holland. Oh, there's Oscar Isaac. Here we go. That I want to like Photoshop a cast picture of all of them together. I don't have the Photoshop skills to do that. Somebody else get on that. But what you have the skills to do is you can draw these people. So you're like, oh, I'd like to make you just a little bit more like this. I'm going to give you some freckles here, hair a little more tall. I love that. I can't do any of that. My art skills are like, my child runs up to me and it makes me draw trains 100 times a day. It is not a useful skill. Lately, it's also been Luigi from like Mario and Luigi. He wants me drawing Luigi all the time. I don't know. Yours may do this at some point too, make you draw things, but I didn't know that was part of being a parent, is being asked to draw things on command. Draw this, Mom.
And if it's not quite right, you have to do it again.
There will be screaming. Yeah. And just keep doing it. But I don't think anybody's ever screamed for like, hey, he doesn't look soft enough, because he's very soft. No.
He's soft. He's lovely.
But you've done these you both do like the layouts and you create all this art, and I'm sure some of that, like you draw I've seen you send characters to me for stories you haven't even barely started writing. It's like, Abigail, write the story, then you do it your order. It's fine.
You tell me this all the time. You're like, who is this? What story is this for? What is it?
Well, I have a hard time keeping track of them, because so everybody has different ways of writing, and there is no judgment here. There's no wrong way or right way, because I know people who operate the same way you do, and others operate the way I do. I'm kind of like a serial monogamist, and I hate when I have to hop stories. And I've had to at times where it's like, oh, well, you need to put a pin in this one because you need to go back and make revisions to this one because this one's coming out, or there's an editor who wants revisions to this or something. And so you'll have to like stop, and it hurts my brain to like hop my brain out of like, okay, leave Jamie where she is, go back, keep writing Terra Conflictura. Okay, now back. I can't do it. Whereas Abigail will send me papers or digitally. She'll send me digital copies of words. She's like, okay, here's this one. Oh, is it more of the one I was reading before? No, it's something new. And I know. And you've written, like, if we attach all your books and somehow smush them into one, you've written tons of books, but how many you finish is a different story, because you hop. So clearly your mind operates in the way where there's like a spark, and you get on it, and then when that spark fizzles out, there's a new one over here, and you're just like chasing the flame.
Yes, I think that's a good representation of my mind.
Yes.
There's always too much going on, and it flips to these things. That's what, you know, I was talking about this with a friend the other day. I said, oh, you know, that year I wrote Roots, 4 Branches, and You're My Summer. I wrote a novella, and now I've not finished anything, because I've got about 10 different things, all in different stages. And then I go back and I read it. I was like, oh, that's rubbish. But I like this bit. And then
none of it's rubbish. I've read like early stuff on, and maybe we're going to talk a little bit about where commas go. But other than that, it's not rubbish.
Well, maybe rubbish isn't the right word, but it, you know, you look back and you're like, not my best. Who knows what I was thinking when I was writing that. But then I also am terribly influenced by everything that goes on. You know, I'll be watching, oh gosh, let me think, Game of Thrones, and I'm like, I need to write a fantasy story. I don't need to write a fantasy story. I need to finish writing what I was writing originally.
Yes.
But then it gets to October, I'm like, oh, I'll do something spooky, and then October goes, and I've not finished anything spooky. So it's very much my mind just kind of flitting about, and when I talk to you, I was like, Allison, I've read something. Can I send it to you? And I feel like hiding behind a cushion, because you're going to be like, well, what is it? What one?
Like, just tell me, which one is this? And since most of them don't have titles because they're works in progress, and then we're like, oh, it's the one with this, and oh, we're back on this one. I'm like, does it have Minnie in it? She's like, no, this Minnie's not in this one. It's over here. And I'm just like, just tell me which book it is and whether I need to start from a new palette. And there are books I've read of yours where you wrote an entire book, and then you're like, I'm going to rewrite this entirely. And I've gone through that in multiple variations. And so other authors who are reading this, some people might be like, oh yeah, no, I operate the exact same way. And I know one of my friends who's one of my other beta readers, she will be like, yeah, guess what? I just wrote 500 words. We're like, great. And she's like, not the book I was supposed to. And it's that kind of thing, because honestly, I feel like eventually we all get to the same point of completion, because we're just working in different ways, and there's no like, oh, that's a better way, or that's a easier way to do it, or a more, you know, just crazy way to do it. Oh, and somebody's putting okay. Oh, that Jen's commenting. She says Abigail should do NaNoWriMo. Maybe that would force her to finish. Oh, forcing her. That'll work.
I tried it last year.
Oh, how'd that go?
Well, I still haven't finished anything, so it went brilliantly.
Brilliant.
I think Nano is really, really good, and I actually still use it throughout the year to like update my word count on things. But I don't know. This is the thing, when I think I've got to write something, I just won't. And it's my own like stubbornness. I'm like, well, no, Love Island's on. I'd rather watch Love Island. I could be writing 1,000 words, but I want to watch Love Island. Or I'd rather just sit than do it.
That's okay. Jen saying I've never succeeded with it. I've never even tried. And I mean, I've shared this before, but I don't do word count goals, because I will hit the word counts and it will be garbage. Because I used to be on a site called Scribophile, and I was in like these accountability groups, and they were great, except it'd be like, yeah, you got to hit these word counts. I was writing, and this is years ago, I was writing a Christian fiction work for kids. And I did finish that book. So aside, I did eventually finish it, but not because of like Nano or something. But if I would get stuck in the word count, I'd be like, you know, they should have like a small group here. And I would just copy words straight out of the Bible to hit my word count. Yep, they were talking about that passage. That isn't helpful. And then did I have to go cut all that out later? Yes, I did. So just this person will fill in anything to hit words. It's not a good. I'm better at like sprinting, like go for an hour, and not just to fill words, but to fill the time with the best use of that time you can, versus some arbitrary word count. And Nano is like, hey, 50,000 words by the end of the month, and do it. And it's like, that's a lot of words at the end of the month. But I'm kind of the same way you are, where it's like, if I want to be able to finish something and the inspiration is there, I can crank out words fast.
Yeah.
If it's happening. If it isn't, I can stare at a blank screen for hours and hours and nothing will happen.
And
So,
then
you
you
know.
just get frustrated. Like I think it was about a month ago I was saying to you I'm aiming to write 1,000 words a night. And there was one evening, it must have been a Friday, because I had some wine. And I said to you, "Oh, Alison, I've done it. I did it in like half an hour." And you're like, "Great." And I was like, the next day I looked at it, I was like, "Oh God, this is just wine-fueled mess," that I thought was great, which, because I was like, I need to get my 1,000 words, I was just going. And it just wasn't beneficial to me. Whereas if I had of that week kind of just sat and thought about what I needed to write, I mean, this is another problem, isn't it? I don't book. So
Pantsers. We're both wearing dresses today, and we are both total pantsers. And
yeah.
And I get that, because I know there are people, and one of my very good writing buddies locally, one of my write owls, she is a plotter, and she'll be like, I'm on this chapter, and here's my outline, and da-da-da. And we're just like, those of us who are not are like, you are amazing that you do that. We don't know how to do that. I joke that the one time I ever needed to outline, I had an editor who wanted a revision on something, and I was told to do 100 pages and an outline of the rest. And how did I write the outline? I made the revisions and then I did an outline afterwards. I can't do it first. It's like my brain just shuts down and goes, what are words?
I'm the same. I will buy like a notebook. I'm like, this is the notebook that's going to change my life. I'm going to plot everything. I bought a pinboard with like
a pinboard?
Yeah, pinboard.
Like a corkboard. Yeah, I got it.
Corkboard,
it's a pinboard.
It's behind me. I don't know if you can see it. It's like,
yeah, I can see it behind you. Yeah.
There is no plotting on there.
No, those are pictures of people.
Those are pictures and pin badges. It just, and I'll look at that notebook and be like, yeah, no, it's not going to happen.
Mm-mm.
But it doesn't work for me. If I was like, Roots originally had an idea, and I'm glad that it didn't go that way, because like you said, I have a tendency to like to kill characters off for no reason.
So mean.
But luckily I didn't, well, with that particular, without giving spoilers, because people do die in Roots, but not horribly.
No, there are some deaths. We were all right with it.
Natural deaths.
Yeah.
But there was another death that was meant to happen, which didn't, and I'm glad it didn't. So plotting isn't for me, because I go mad with power. I think that's the problem.
Like the George R.R. Martin of LGBTQ plus romance. You're like, look at me. And it's funny because I remember way earlier on we talked about, and this is gonna be a little controversial. This is our hot take. So most people know the definition of romance needs to have either a happily ever after or happily for now. And we talked about, does that apply in LGBTQ plus romance? Because there's like more tragedy expected. There's more things to be battled with, homophobia and all this stuff. And it's like, no, it's still a romance. We still want our characters to have this happily ever after. Don't we need that? Don't we need to see love as love? And we need to see these people falling in love despite odds, even if the odds are like, oh yeah, you got beat up for looking at somebody. That's, yeah, like, why are people? But to have that, and then it means we can't have you being the George R.R. Martin of killing off all of your characters. Like, nope, you can't do that, Abigail.
I'm not saying it's okay for me to kill off my characters. No. But when it comes to like LGBTQI plus work, you know, it doesn't, not everybody has a happy ending, but I think, of course, it should still follow that romance thing of people have a happy ending or happy for now, because for years and years, like in literature or in film, you know, people who didn't identify as straight often were seen as a villain or had a horrible death because of their sexuality. And, you know, things have progressed now. Things are still not perfect. But within literature, I think it's wonderful to see so many, like, of these beautiful love stories and giving them a happy ever after, because everyone deserves it. And I don't think there should be like any changes there. I mean, I still might kill off characters.
I reserve the right to still do this. Well, okay, so let's also push the boundaries a little bit, because I introduced you as a contemporary romance author, and we've talked a little bit about, okay, so the age range that some of this applies to, we mostly assume this is adult, but some of this may be skewing towards new adult or even young adult. But sometimes you may even push out of just straight romance. I don't mean straight, but I mean like romance as a genre into other genres. And I think in other genres, you can get away with a higher body count. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, sure.
Like romance, people are a little like, they can't have a happily ever after if one of them is dead, unless like we get zombies or vampires or some way to make them undead, time machine. And then again, we're into other genres at that point if we've got time machines going on. Like, no time machines in any of the books I've read from you so far.
No.
We talked about You Are My Summer and Roots Before Branches. And then the third one, which right now I know you're reworking, is a novella, Linger on My Pillow, which is just, okay, I just want a banana milkshake just even thinking about this. Like, anybody who knows me knows that I write a lot of food. I'm in trouble for writing so much food. But there's such a sweet...
You're so good at it.
I will, but just something as sweet as a banana milkshake, and you've got these guys just enjoying this scene, and it's just so just real and homey and just makes you want to just be there with them and hang out with them. And then the friends involved in that, because I feel like that one, we talked a little bit how some books it's like, oh, it's just romance, but this one's like the relationship between a romance, a new romance, getting to know like the friend group. And how many of us have gone through that in real life? I feel like we don't see that a lot in romance, where it's like all the side characters are just gone and it's just this tunnel vision of, all we see is each other and we run into each other's arms. Like, no, you have to like meet each other's friends, and is it weird? Is it awkward? And they like them, and all of that. So tell us about Linger on My Pillow.
So I think out of the three, that one's probably the most like straight, kind of in the romance genre compared to the others. It's a novella, so
I don't have room for anything else.
So many pages.
It's a novella.
Yeah. But like you said, I'm reworking it because I reread it recently, and I was like, like you said, the characters in that, like the friends, I really like them, and I think if I could flesh it out more, it would actually make quite a nice novel. Yeah. But it's about these two men who have a one-night stand, basically, and I guess it's a little love at first sight, which I don't normally do. I like people
there's like some smitten at first sight. I wouldn't say they were like that. Oh, let's profess our undying love on the first date. That's awkward. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. No, they don't say that or anything, but it's more about them kind of meeting and having this connection, and over literally like the days after that first night, kind of being thrown into each other's lives, and if they can get a relationship out of it at the end. But the friend characters I really loved writing, and I've often thought about writing some side stories about those, but never got around to it. You know what I'm like. So
you hop around so much. I wouldn't be surprised if I start getting pages. I'm like, hey, here's the best girlfriend in this one. I liked her. She was her name Zendaya?
Zendaya, yeah.
Okay, because I'm like, of course I'm picturing the Zendaya, because how many Zendayas are there? But she's fabulous. So it's like, you can do that. I stole Tom Holland from one of my books. You can have Zendaya. It's fair. Yeah. It's like he doesn't know he's in my books. He's fine. I'm like way too old for him anyway.
Oh, he's so cute though, isn't he?
He's so cute. He's very sweet. He's very sweet. But I mean, we're allowed to be inspired by wherever we're inspired. And as Elisa Bunchwoman says, everyone does deserve a happily ever after, including some of the side friends. And that's one of the things I've done in my books is, as those who've read it know, is I start with one pair and then like the side characters get their stories. So I would love if I got to read some of the side characters in yours, including some of the younger characters in Yams and some of the younger characters in Roots Before Branches, where there are some characters introduced at different points where it's like, oh, maybe they're going, and you've promised those stories are coming, but have any pages come to me? No, they haven't.
There will be a mini Lavender story. There will be.
I'm waiting.
I know. I have about 8 pages of it. That's it. But there will be
8 pages?
There will be. It's just getting into the mindset of them, I suppose. And I think in some ways I'm always a little bit scared of touching those characters that are in other books, because then you're inevitably going to have Charlie and Ezra show up. And I don't want to ruin them. I don't know, because you know what I
No,
mean?
that's true,
What
because
if I
you kind of
kill
have
one
them
of
like
them?
their completed story arc from their own stories, and you're like, oh, I'll
Right.
bring you over here. I can't upset the apple cart or like
Yeah.
the Ezra cart or whatever. You want to make their story still complete, but you can still have them influence these other characters. And I know one of the things we were talking about. Okay, well, what are you working on now? And I will not spoil any of the pages I've read from all the different things you've sent me, because I've lost track. How can I spoil anything? And most of them hadn't gotten to the point
You
where
don't
like,
even know what I'm doing.
yeah, what did they do to you? You're like, okay, I mean, you've got triplets in one, but the one you're working on right now, or at least the one we were talking about you working on, was one that has something I love, food, and preferably people are making the food as part of, was it going to be a competition or some kind of thing? And it was, are we still looking at it being YA? Because people are changing. I didn't know this could happen. You can change genre after you've written the book. You can change age range after you've written the book. I have a friend who I've baited for, who got feedback and got told, this would work better instead of as an adult story, as a middle grade story. And he's looking at aging the characters down. And it makes sense. And I never would have even considered that as like beta feedback. Change the age range. But it actually makes sense.
A change, really, because it
Yeah.
will, I'm trying to think, if I changed the ages in like You Are My Summer, it would have been completely different. So it makes huge difference. But
Well, and a lot of times authors, they don't want to change too much, especially if they're like, I'm already established writing for this audience, that if they start swapping, they're worried they're not going to have people follow them from one to the other. And that's a valid concern. And I know some people are like, oh, I wrote this and then I wrote these, and now I kind of don't want to pursue that, because then I'm going to be pegged into, okay, that's YA and I want to write adult now and I can't do the crossover. And it's weird because so many adults read YA that I don't think it would be an issue, but clearly there's a reason for a concern that you don't want to lose readers along the way. So I get that. But I know that people have changed things afterwards. When I had Shelley Parker Chan on this show and she wrote She Who Became the Sun, I found out that book was written as like Chinese historical, and they added the fantasy later because they thought that that's what readers would want, that they would like that historical, because white people are narrow-minded. They wanted, historical is Euro fiction. So when they're like, oh, it's Chinese, we have to add fantasy. Didn't matter to me because the fantasy element was not the primary focus of the book. It was just this gorgeous book. But the idea that she had a complete book and then they're like, by the way, change the genre and shove in fantasy. And she's like, you want to give me a book deal, we will figure out how to make this work. But you'd think that's a huge change to just be like, oh, well, by the way, now there's magic. But I've read stuff from yours where you've then gone and been like, magic. There's no magic in these other than the magic of love. But stuff you were working on that you've done that. So I can see you kind of shifting things around. But baking, get back to baking. What am I talking about? Back to baking.
You're right. When I first started writing it, it was meant to be, but it's a young adult. The characters are young, but based around a bit like a bake-off type competition, but for obviously younger people. But there's no competition anymore. It's gone. But there's still.
So what are Paul Hollywood and Mary Berry and Prue going to be talking about if there's no competition? They're not in your book either. They're just
Might get some letters from them if I just.
You're like, you can't put character name. His name is Raoul Bollywood. That's too close. You can't do that. Oh, but I changed his name. This person's name is Prue. Their name's now Shu. That's not even a name, Allison. It's fine. I name people whose names that aren't names. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine. But, so what is it looking like then if there's no competition? Because originally a young boy was going, not young boy, but a teen boy was going to be doing like this teen bake-off kind of thing, which bake-off, here we call it Great British Baking Show because Pillsbury, I think, said you guys can't use the word bake-off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called Baking Show here because Pillsbury owns the right to the term bake-off. And so you have a different opening. You've got to do a different opening for us than for you.
Oh, that's crazy.
It is crazy.
I don't know if I like that.
And I just want to see my soggy bottoms Victoria sponge. I don't care what they call it.
No soggy bottoms, Allison.
I want my handshake. It's never gonna happen. Okay, so there's no competition. Go on.
No, it's okay. So I recently went on holiday, as you know, to France. Yes. France is my favorite place in the whole wide world, which is why my first book was set there. And I went to this absolutely gorgeous little like proper French village, and they had a bakery and it was shut down. And I was like, oh, because when I first saw it, I was like, yay, a proper like French bakery. I'm gonna go in.
And it was closed?
It was shut down.
Like permanently closed.
Yeah, permanently. And I thought,
now this is a tragedy.
I know. So in my head, I was already thinking about this baking one that I'd started. Being in France made me think, I'm going to set it in France. But how would you have it in France? And I saw this little bakery, and I thought, well, maybe there isn't a competition, but it centers around this bakery in France that these British people are running in this like rural village. And I don't know if I mentioned to you, but there are now, I mean, this is about the whole genre hopping thing. It's now a ghost story set in a French bakery.
Where's Jen? She does my ghosts. I don't do ghosts.
I need to talk to Jen.
We need to get Jennifer Ann Gordon, gothic horror author, in here. I don't write ghosts. So the ghosts are baking bread. Abigail, you're going to need to walk me through this. I love it. I'll read it. I don't understand, but go on.
I mean, I don't know if I fully understand.
You'll have to work it through. Like, knead those lumps out as you go and knead it together, braid the bread, and eventually the story shall rise.
It was when I was in this village, as beautiful as it was out of season, and it was a really, when I'm talking about a small French village, it was like there was the restaurant here, the church here, and houses here. Like that's it.
That's your village. That's all you get.
Which was, I would move there tomorrow. But there was also where we were staying. We were just outside the village. To get there, we had to walk through a massive field basically, and then past this lake, which during the summer they have like pedal boats and things like that, but it was all shut down. And I remember walking and I thought, there's something kind of Camp Crystal Lakey vibe going on here. I wouldn't be surprised if someone comes out the water and comes after me, and that kind of just stuck with me. And I thought, you have this contrast with this really like picturesque, beautiful village, but just down the road, there's actually something during the summer. I'm sure it's fabulous. I wasn't there. But when I went, it had this like eeriness, this quietness that was quite like harrowing. And I thought, I could maybe try and marry them together with some cake. I don't know.
Hey, it's a wedding cake. Bring it in. The ghost tips. I don't know. Well, I'm picturing, because like Camp Crystal Lake, I'm picturing like stabbing the wedding cake instead of.
I might not have any stabbing.
No.
But we'll see.
I believe in you. I believe you can do it. I've read so many versions of so many of your books, and I love all of them so much. I'm excited to read this one. Those of you who haven't had a chance to read You Are My Summer, you're missing out. You need to go get that one. And Roots Before Branches. I don't have a physical copy of that one. I wish I did. Go get that one. What?
I don't have a physical copy of Roots Before Branches. Do you know how bad that is? I thought, I'll grab my books.
I don't hold my book.
Talk about them. And I only have the old one. This one, which is not the...
Then it's not the newer cover. Well, and you had a couple different covers, and as we talked about earlier, Abigail has designed some of my covers, she's designed some of her covers, and she's designed versions of her covers. So even the one, if you look for Roots Before Branches right now, there's a picture of a man with like a pink flower in his mouth. That's the current cover, right? Okay, I was gonna say that's an older cover, and there was one even before that with like a handprint. Yeah. So people might have different versions. They're like collector's items now of different things.
Have the one with a handprint. That's very rare.
That's very rare and possibly black market obtained. You might have some explanations about how you got it. We're not going to ask questions though. We might just have you talk with the Florida authorities. It's fine. It's just a bunch of alligators. It's okay. But I'm excited to read whatever you have coming out next. And I just keep writing. I'll read whatever it is that comes out. And one of these days, one of the books will be finished and then other people can read.
That's the aim. Hopefully this year.
That's the hope. Abigail, thank you so much for joining me. We are pretty much out of time. We're already past the 40-minute mark, but it just flew by because I just want to keep hanging out with you. But people might be like, guys, we got to go make lunch or something. I don't know. It's different time periods. Like for me, it's almost lunchtime, but for you, you probably should put your kid to bed at some point because It's nighttime here. Although it's still, I don't know how it's still so bright at night for you.
I have no idea. It's
No idea.
like to about 10 now. It's crazy.
I forget how close you are to the globe. Jen just got back from Iceland and it was like it was like light all night long. And she's like, I cannot sleep. This is crazy. I feel like you're almost that high, like equator wise. I don't know. It's kind of crazy.
Level, but
it's no ice, but it's fine. But you're good. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. And for those of you who are looking forward to more stuff, so tomorrow on Vox Vomitus, we will have the Bram Stoker award-winning author Paul Tremblay joining us to talk about his forthcoming book, The Pallbearers Club, and there's movies and all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm like losing my mind. I can't even keep up with that, man. And then next month, July 5th, we will have on this show, To the Moon Allison, I'll have Chelsea Abdullah talking about The Stardust Thief. So please come back. And that book, I believe, is already out. So go look for it, The Stardust Thief. So if you were like, oh, I can't watch the show until I've read the book, go read the book. You can catch up. You have like a whole month to do it. Meanwhile, go read You Are My Summer and Roots Before Branches. And thank you, Abigail. And if you are watching this on the replay on the Vox Vomitus channel, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any videos for this, for Vox Vomitus, or To the Moon. I must have said To the Moon Jennifer. I just sent Jen to the moon. That's good. Let's scare Jennifer to death. I just combined our shows. It's all good. I'm a little tired. It's fine. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Abigail. And we'll see you next time.
bye.
Bye.